All right, so I think everyone listening has probably thought about being a landlord at some point.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the idea of passive income
Yeah.
and building wealth and maybe even like a vacation home or something.
Yeah.
But being a landlord is a lot more than just finding a tenant and cashing checks, right?
It really is a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And that's something we're going to dive into today.
Exactly.
We're using this podcast
Sure.
called Property Management 101
Yeah, they're great.
to kind of pull out the need-to-know info
Mm-hmm.
and help people avoid, some of the mistakes that new landlords often make.
Yeah, they actually start the podcast off with a story about how so many new landlords
Right.
get tripped up by legal issues, you know?
Yeah, they tell this story about a landlord
Oh, gosh.
who ended up in court, and he lost a lot of money
Yeah.
because he used a lease agreement that he downloaded off the internet.
Oh, no.
And he didn't realize that it wasn't actually legal in his state.
Oof. So understanding local laws is essential then.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's like building a house without a foundation.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
You might be fine for a while, but eventually it's going to fall apart.
You're going to have problems.
The podcast actually strongly recommends that people consult with, like, a real estate attorney.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe join a property management association just to get up to speed on all the legal stuff.
Yeah, it's like peace of mind. Right.
Exactly.
So you don't have to worry about getting sued.
Right.
So we've talked about the legal stuff. What about finding tenants?
Well, before you even start looking at applications, you have to figure out how much rent you can charge.
Right.
It's called The Art and Science of Pricing by Property Management 101.
Okay.
You can't just compare your property to other ones in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
They recommend things like checking the vacancy rate, looking at market trends,
Oh.
even thinking about future development projects that might impact property values.
Wow, that's a lot more than I thought.
It is. It is.
So you really have to think ahead.
You do. It's like being a detective, trying to figure out what the future of the market's going to be.
I like that analogy.
If you set the rent too high, you might not find any tenants.
Right. Nobody will want to rent it.
And if you set it too low, you're losing money.
Yeah, you're leaving money on the table.
Exactly.
Okay, so you figure out the rent, you followed all the local laws, you get the listing up, and then the applications start coming in.
Right.
I mean, this is where it can get exciting. But also, the podcast talks about some landlords who make mistakes at this point.
Oh, for sure. The biggest one is rushing through the tenant screening process.
Yeah, I could see that happening. You just want to get somebody in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they actually share a story about this one landlord who skipped the background checks.
Oh, no.
Because the applicant seemed so charming and had a good job.
Oh.
But turns out he had a history of evictions and ended up destroying the apartment.
Oh, gosh. So what should landlords be doing to screen tenants?
So Property Management 101 says there's three main things.
Okay.
Credit history,
Mm-hmm.
income verification,
Makes sense.
and then references from previous landlords.
Oh, yeah, that's so important.
It is.
Yeah.
Credit reports tell you a lot about how responsible they are with money.
Right.
Income verification proves they can actually afford the rent.
And the previous landlord references can give you an idea of how they actually are as a tenant.
Exactly. It's really valuable information.
Okay, so you screen diligently and you find the right tenants.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, there's one thing we can be sure of.
What's that?
Things break.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Property Management 101 says that being prepared for these maintenance issues
Right.
is important to keep tenants happy.
Yeah, of course.
But it's also about protecting your investment in the property.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's like if you see a small crack in the foundation of your house, if you ignore it, it's going to get worse over time.
Yeah, and turn into a huge problem.
Right.
So what are some ways to stay ahead of those problems?
They're really big on proactive maintenance.
Okay.
Instead of waiting for things to go wrong, they suggest regular inspections, at least twice a year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That way you can catch small problems before they become big, expensive ones.
Yeah, like a dripping faucet turning into a flood.
Exactly.
Oh, no.
Plus, it also shows tenants that you care.
Right, that you're taking care of the place.
Exactly.
And if you're addressing issues promptly, tenants are less likely to get upset.
They are. It builds trust.
Yeah, and a good relationship with your tenants.
Right. It's all about communication.
Yeah, communication seems like it's really key.
It really is. Property Management 101 talks all about the importance of communication between landlords and tenants. You have to set clear expectations right from the beginning.
Yeah.
They even suggest giving tenants a welcome packet with all the info they need,
Oh, that's smart.
like how to pay rent, how to make maintenance requests,
Yeah.
what the house rules are.
So everybody's on the same page.
Exactly.
We've talked about a lot of stuff, legal stuff, finding tenants, maintenance. But now we have to talk about evictions.
Nobody wants to think about that.
I know, but it's part of the reality of being a landlord.
It is.
What happens when things go wrong?
Property Management 101 actually emphasizes knowing the eviction laws in your area
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
because you have to follow the proper procedures
Right.
or else you could get sued by the tenant.
Oh, wow. So even when things are going bad, you still have to be careful.
Exactly.
Well, what do they recommend?
They recommend documenting everything.
Okay.
Rent payments, maintenance requests, any communication you have with the tenant.
Okay, so if you have to go to court, you have proof.
Right. You have a paper trail to back you up.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of info here. Legal considerations, rent pricing, tenant screening, maintenance, evictions.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It is. It's a lot more than people think. Yeah. Being a landlord is definitely more than just collecting rent checks.
For sure.
And in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore how Property Management 101 takes it even further.
Yeah, there's so much more to learn.
There is. We're going to look at how to actually thrive as a landlord.
I'm excited to hear it.
Me too.
So we covered a lot of the basics in that last part.
Yeah, we talk about finding good tenants, understanding all the laws.
Right, and being prepared for when things break.
Yeah, because they always do.
Exactly, but Property Management 101 goes a lot deeper.
Oh yeah, they have so much good advice.
Yeah, they talk about how to really make the most of your property.
It's about going from just managing a property to really maximizing its potential.
Okay, so how do you make that jump? What separates the good landlords from the great ones?
Well, they talk about changing your mindset.
Oh, okay.
Instead of just reacting to problems, you have to be proactive.
I see.
They compare it to being a gardener.
Okay.
You don't just wait for the plants to wilt before you water them.
Right, you're constantly taking care of them.
Exactly. You're fertilizing the soil, you're pruning them.
So how does that apply to being a landlord?
One of the biggest things is thinking long-term.
Okay.
Don't just focus on this month's rent.
Right.
Think about how your decisions today will affect the property 5, 10, even 20 years from now.
So you're playing a long game,
Exactly.
making choices that will increase the value of your property.
Right. And make it attractive to tenants for years to come.
So what are some examples of that?
Well, they recommend investing in upgrades,
Okay.
even if it costs a little more upfront.
Like what kinds of upgrades?
Things like replacing old appliances with energy-efficient ones.
Oh, okay.
That might seem expensive now, but it can save you money on utilities later.
And it's better for the environment.
Exactly, and tenants like that.
It's like investing in your retirement.
Yeah, exactly like that.
You might not see the benefits right away, but it's worth it in the long run.
Property Management 101 is an interesting way of looking at maintenance, too.
Okay, how do they see it?
They say it's not just a necessary evil, it's an investment.
An investment.
Yeah, it's an investment in your property.
Okay, I can see that.
If you take care of things, your property will be worth more.
And it will last longer.
Exactly.
So how do they recommend approaching maintenance?
They're all about preventative maintenance.
What's that mean?
It means fixing small problems before they become big problems.
Okay, so like being proactive.
Right. They say you should create a maintenance schedule,
Oh, okay.
like cleaning the gutters, inspecting the roof, servicing appliances, testing smoke detectors.
That's smart. Catching those small problems early can save you a lot of money later.
Exactly. And it shows your tenants that you care.
And if you have a good relationship with your tenants, that can prevent problems down the road.
Definitely. They even suggest giving tenants a checklist of basic maintenance tasks.
Okay, like what kinds of tasks?
Things like changing air filters, checking for leaks.
Oh, okay.
That way they can help take care of the property too.
And it keeps you informed about any potential issues.
It's a win-win.
That's a great idea.
It really helps build a good landlord-tenant relationship.
Yeah, because even with good tenants and clear communication, disagreements can still happen.
Oh, definitely. It's inevitable.
So how do you deal with those?
Property Management 101 says to stay calm.
Okay, easier said than done sometimes.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's important to listen to your tenant.
Okay.
Try to understand their perspective.
Before you get defensive.
Exactly.
Do they have any specific tips for those conversations?
Yeah, they recommend using I statements.
Okay.
Like, I'm concerned about potential damage, instead of, you're not allowed to do this.
Oh, that's a good tip. It sounds less accusatory.
It does. It keeps the focus on the issue.
Not on blaming the tenant.
Right. It's about working together to find a solution.
What else do they talk about?
They really emphasize clear communication.
Okay.
Like, decide how you want to communicate: email, text, phone calls.
And stick with that.
Exactly, and document everything.
That's a good tip. It can protect you if you end up in court.
It's always good to have a paper trail.
So we've talked about dealing with individual tenant issues.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture of managing your property business?
Property Management 101 talks about creating systems.
Systems.
Yeah, like a well-oiled machine.
I like that analogy.
Everything has its place. Everything runs smoothly.
Okay, so how do you do that?
Write down your processes for everything.
Like what kinds of things?
Tenant screening, lease agreements, rent collection, maintenance requests.
Oh, okay.
That way everything is consistent.
And you can delegate tasks if you need to.
Exactly. It makes it easier to scale your business.
So if you want to hire a property manager or buy more properties,
Right. It's all about setting yourself up for success.
it's like creating a recipe that you can follow every time.
Exactly.
They also talk about building a team of professionals.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
Who should you have on your team?
They recommend finding a plumber, an electrician, a handyman, a real estate attorney.
So you have someone to call if something goes wrong.
Exactly. You have experts you can trust.
That takes a lot of the pressure off.
It does. It frees you up to focus on the bigger picture.
Setting goals, managing your finances.
Right. All the important stuff.
But even with a good team and good systems, being a landlord can be tough.
Oh, it definitely can be stressful.
So how do you stay motivated?
Property Management 101 says you have to find ways to make it enjoyable,
Okay.
like connect with other landlords.
Oh, that's a good idea. Share your experiences
Right. Learn from each other.
and support each other.
Exactly. It can be really helpful to have that community.
What other tips do they have?
They say to celebrate your successes,
Okay.
even the small ones,
Yeah, I like that.
like when you find a great tenant.
Or you finish a renovation.
Right. It's important to acknowledge those wins.
It can help you stay positive when things get tough.
It can. It can.
It's easy to get bogged down in the day-to-day stuff.
It is. And forget about the big picture.
Yeah, it's important to remember why you're doing this.
What are your goals?
What do you want to achieve?
That can help you stay motivated.
It can.
So it's about finding that balance between the practical stuff and the big picture. It's about remembering that being a landlord is more than just collecting rent checks.
It is. It's about building something meaningful
Yeah, creating value.
and making a positive impact on your tenants and the community.
That's a great way to think about it.
It is, and that's something that Property Management 101 really emphasizes.
Yeah, I can see that.
They talk about how important it is to be both financially successful and ethically responsible.
And that's what we're going to talk about in the next part of our deep dive.
We're going to explore how Property Management 101 handles the ethical side of being a landlord.
How do you balance profit with people?
How do you make sure your business is both successful and socially responsible? Stay tuned to find out. So we've talked about like the strategy and all the practical stuff when it comes to managing a property.
Yeah, the laws, screening tenants, being prepared for maintenance.
Right, exactly. But Property Management 101 also talks about the human side of things too.
Yeah, they dedicate a whole episode to the ethics of being a landlord.
Yeah, which is something I think is really important.
It's interesting because they kind of challenge the idea that being a successful landlord is all about the money.
Yeah.
They talk about how it's also about being responsible.
So you can be profitable and be ethical.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Okay, how do they suggest doing that?
They have this great analogy. They compare a rental property to a small village.
Okay.
The landlord is like the mayor.
Oh, I like that.
They're responsible for taking care of the community.
Right, so you can't just ignore the needs of your tenants.
Exactly. You have to find that balance between making money and taking care of people.
So what does ethical property management actually look like?
Well, one of the big things they talk about is being fair and transparent with your tenants.
All right.
Like setting reasonable rent prices.
Yeah.
Being honest about the condition of the property.
Right.
Handling maintenance requests quickly.
So basically just treating people with respect.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that they have rights.
Not just obligations.
Yeah, exactly. And they even talk about going above and beyond what the law requires.
Okay. Like what?
Like giving tenants more notice than you legally have to before entering their unit.
Oh, right. For repairs and stuff.
Yeah, and being flexible with their schedules.
So it's about being considerate.
Exactly. Remembering that this is their home.
Not just some investment.
Right. And they also talk about being mindful of the community.
Oh, okay. How so?
Like if you're doing renovations, try to hire local contractors
Okay.
and use sustainable materials.
So it's about thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah, the impact your actions have on everyone.
That's a good point.
And of course, they talk about discrimination.
Right. That's a big one.
They remind landlords that you can't discriminate against tenants based on race, religion, anything like that.
Yeah, everyone deserves a safe and welcoming place to live.
Exactly. They even encourage landlords to go above and beyond to support their tenants.
Oh, okay. Like what?
They share a story about one landlord who made a community garden for their tenants.
Oh, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a way for them to connect with each other and grow their own food.
That's a great example of how you can be a positive force as a landlord.
It really is.
It's about more than just providing shelter.
It's about creating a community.
They end the episode with a question, asking listeners to think about their legacy.
Well, that's a good one.
Like, how do you want to be remembered as a landlord?
Do you want to be known as someone who put profits over people?
Or someone who actually made a difference in their tenants' lives?
It's a question we should all think about.
Yeah, no matter how long you've been a landlord.
It's about recognizing that our choices have consequences.
And that we have a responsibility to do the right thing. So, as we finish up this deep dive into Property Management 101,
Yeah.
let's all try to be ethical landlords.
Yeah.
Let's treat our tenants with fairness and respect.
And think about the impact we're having on our communities.
Let's remember that being a landlord is more than just a business.
It's a chance to make a real difference in the world.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Property Management 101.
We hope you learned something.
And maybe even feel inspired to be a better landlord.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
Until next time, happy property managing.